everybody, my name is Leslie Powell. I work at Nelson Mandela University as the Research Chair for Youth Unemployment, Employability and Empowerment. I'm really happy to have this opportunity to talk about the Springer book. The book arrived in South Africa later than it did to you guys, to the rest of the world, I'm told, because we only got it about a week and 2 weeks ago. And my team and I were looking at the book, and one of the things that we noticed is that the book sections are quite a bit different to previous Springer Handbook book sections. And this is so interesting for us because it shows the shift in the field and the new debates and the new areas that are beginning to move into VT. And of course, one of the sections that is totally new is the section 2, the skills for sustainable human development. Another interesting thing about the book was just so many new authors were part of this book, and this was interesting for us and important for us because so many of these authors are Southern authors, and it begins to show the growth in Southern literature on VET, and this really matters to us, and it was really fantastic for us to see our own voices reflected in this very important handbook. So thank you very much to the editors for the commitment that was made to doing this and for expanding the voices that were included. Simon has asked me to talk specifically about section 2, the section called Skills for Sustainable Human Development. I was the section editor for this section. When we were first doing this section of the handbook, Simon and I both thought that each subsection would need a short introduction. So I began making notes towards such an introduction, and I was struck by the thought that this section of the handbook it just wouldn't have been possible 5 years ago. There just would not have been enough work, or pretty much not any work, to justify a full volume, and there wasn't really enough people. And there were people like Bonvin, there was some work with Tickley, Leon Tickley, I had done a bit of work, and mainly human development had been applied to schooling and higher education, but not to VET. And so the fact that we could in fact put together a section of the volume, section 2 of the volume with 10 chapters in it, is really quite amazing because it shows that this body of work is slowly starting to build up and maybe escalate. In terms of the process of this volume, as with the rest of the handbook, there was a strong attempt to include Southern authors and as wide a range of voices and contexts as possible. This was interesting and also challenging because it meant working with authors who were very experienced writers and very experienced at publishing, and then also working with authors who had almost no experience or very limited experience, and for all of them working with me who also had very limited experience as being the section editor. So a lot of interesting experiences for all of us, and I think we walked this journey together as a community in many ways, and that in itself is special, that people got to exchange a bit and got to know each other a bit, and I think that was important as well. So as I said, the subsection has 10 chapters, and they all make a unique and very special contribution to this agenda of bringing a human development approach to VET. And I don't want to do a spoiler and kind of going through all the papers, and there's so much good work in the subsection that I'm almost worried about highlighting some of the work and not highlighting others. And the time is really short, so I'll just pick out a few aspects. Together and across all of the 10 chapters, the papers contradict and oppose a crude human capital approach to VET. And they function together as this powerful critique of the employability agenda. And they do this in many different ways, but collectively they highlight that the focus of VET should be directly and unapologetically on human flourishing rather than on some indirect measures such as employability or economic growth, neither of which we know equates to human flourishing. I think that Jean-Michel Bonvin's chapter in particular does a really, really good job of mapping this debate and of mapping the critique that the human development or capability approach brings to the human capital orthodoxy. Underpinning the work is a completely different epistemology. You know, so much of VT work has been quantitative, and the emphasis in the human development approach on agency and in voice insists that the experience of learners and of youth has to be brought to the table. And these chapters from within the different contexts, they recognize these experiences and they bring these different perspectives onto the table to talk about the aspiration and how they maneuver into and through VT and how they understand its value. So David Balwaz's chapter, for example, draws on interviews that were undertaken in an informal settlement in South Africa. Mine Simon's chapter draws on interviews done with young people in the Eastern Cape, also in South Africa. And Rebecca Sewett's chapter also draws on interviews, as does Randa Hilal's, actually, from two different contexts. I mean, Randa's in Palestine and Rebecca's in the UK. Both those chapters put gender on the table, and again from two different contexts and in quite different ways methodologically, because Randa uses a mixed method and Rebecca mainly focuses on interviews. So these papers present new empirical work from these different contexts, and using the tools of the human development approaches really push these papers to open up a new vision of how agentially communities, young people are beginning to both experience VT, but also how they are beginning to understand what VT might do for their lives. And by doing this, these papers open up a completely new vision for the role that VT might play in development in both developing and in developed contexts. So for me as an African, the question really is, what might be the job of VT in Africa? And I think that the same question stands for the rest of the developing world, and in fact it applies to the developed context as well. Our world is changing so much, and in a way we're planning these education systems and we're planning these VT systems and we're planning them on what we know today and what we knew about yesterday, but we're moving towards a world that none of us can really understand, and with global warming and unemployment growing by the day. And so I think that what this section really does, it opens up this question and it insists that we ask the communities that are being served by the sector and the young people who are being served by it, it insists that we ask them, what do you think should be the job of the sector? And I think that's a very important contribution, and hopefully it's a contribution that others will build on and take forward. So I don't want to do a complete spoil of subsection 2, and I really encourage and I really just encourage you to have a look yourself. I do want to say that the handbook is really impressive, and I want to congratulate the editors. I mean, Simon, Joy, Martin, Rebecca, what a fantastic and unique contribution to VT this is. It's a piece of work that you can feel so proud of, and that we can all feel proud of. And it's a piece of work that's taking forward in such significant ways our understanding of VT. And it's a piece of work that comes at this time, you know, when we sit at this cusp, at this frontier between yesterday and tomorrow, and none of us know what this tomorrow is going to bring. We can see the regression pathway, and we've got hints that it's going to be very different to our yesterday. And so this work sits on this cusp and tries to grapple with what this tomorrow might mean, what vocational might mean for this tomorrow, what training might mean for this tomorrow. And I think it's a piece of work that's going to stand, and it's going to stand for a long time. So thank you so much. Thank you for allowing me the opportunity to edit the section 2. It was an amazing experience, and thanks to the editors and thanks to the whole community, really, because I think this was a piece of work that the community really threw the energy behind. So enjoy the rest of the afternoon, everybody. I know quite a few of you in the room. I miss you guys. I wish I could have been there with you, but have a lovely afternoon. Yeah, bye.